On Friday afternoon, Virgil delivered a couple of yearling steers to the abattoir outside of Saugerties, and on the way home he stopped at Slim's Roadhouse for a pitcher of beer and an order of chicken wings. It had been sweltering the past few days, and the stockyard at the slaughterhouse was like an oven. The place was in a hollow where there was no breeze at all, just a couple of dozen steers standing in the steaming lot, the manure almost liquid in the air, flies hovering by the thousands. Virgil had released his steers into the lot and headed for town. He was at a table near the front windows, working on the beer while he waited for his order, when Mudcat McCluskey came through the kitchen and into the bar carrying a large styrofoam cooler, which he propped on the counter and opened to reveal half a dozen striped bass inside. The fish were still alive, flopping in the tepid water, gasping for breath. They were of a nice size for eating, 5- and 6-pounders, the colors bright, eyes clear. Mudcat said he caught them out in the Hudson, off Kimball's Point, a village just north of Athens. If there were two truths to be known about Mudcat, one was that he was as lazy as a pet coon, and the other was that he was full of shit. Nobody in the bar believed that he'd caught the fish now on display in the styrofoam cooler. He may have bought them from whoever did catch them. Unlikely, as Mudcat was both cheap and chronically broke. Or he may have stolen them out of somebody's boat. Or he may have just borrowed the fish for half an hour for the sole purpose of bringing them into the bar to brag. The latter scenario grew more plausible when the cook from Slim's came out of the kitchen sharpening a filleting knife. Mudcat quickly put the top on the cooler and headed out the front door. It didn't matter to Virgil whether it was Mudcat or somebody else who caught the stripers. The fact remained that somebody had caught them, and by the time Virgil finished his beer and his wings, he decided he would play hooky the next day and head out to try his own luck. He hadn't been out in his boat much since earlier in the spring, when the striped bass began their run, despite promising himself he would use it regularly. But by April the new calves were coming, and May was planting time, and most of June was spent haying. Now it was nearly July, and his wheat was just about ready for harvest. But, according to Mudcat McCluskey, the stripers were biting again off Kimball's Point. Virgil could use a day off. He usually launched at Brownie's Marina, in a cove just north of town. The place was a local hangout, he'd discovered. There was the boat dock and the marina, which sold bait and angling gear, and a few things like soda and chips and sandwiches. Adjacent to the marina parking lot was a roadhouse called Scallywags, the standard dockside venue, a beer and wings joint that sold better than average food, and had 2 pool tables in the back. Virgil usually stopped in at Scallywags for a cold draft or two after he'd been out on the boat. He got to know some of the locals, including Mudcat McCluskey, and occasionally he'd played some 8-ball with them. The Brownie who owned the marina was a fat slug named Gordon Brown. Virgil learned that he'd been a cop in Albany for 30 years, a sergeant for the last 10 before cashing in his pension and buying the marina. Virgil knew Brownie as well as he wanted to. The man was a barely functioning drunk and a gossip who appeared friendly on the surface until it became obvious that he didn't have a good word to say about anybody who wasn't within earshot. Virgil had never been a fan of cops in general, the luscious Claire Marchand notwithstanding, and he had no trouble disliking Brownie at first sight. The next morning he was up before the sun. He'd overwatered the stock the night before, and he threw the horses some feed and had a quick look at the cattle in the back pasture before heading out. He reached the marina at dawn. It was warm already. The temperature had been routinely hitting the mid-90s every day, and today would be no exception. There was a cash box by the launch for anyone docking a boat before the tackle shop itself opened. It operated on the honor system, and Virgil used it whenever the shop was closed, and even when the shop was open. It was quicker to slip a fin in the box, and it saved him from feigning small talk with Brownie or Mudcat, who sometimes ran the shop when Brownie was gone for the day, or was too hung over to open. Virgil launched the cedar strip and tied it off to the dock while he parked the truck and trailer in the large paved lot between the marina and Scallywags. By the time he fired the old Johnson up and chugged away from the dock, heading for the channel, there were 3 other boats in the lot, lined up and waiting to launch. Virgil idled out past the pier, watching an elderly Vietnamese man casting off the rocks with a silver spinner, reeling in slowly.